They laughed when they signed the papers. Her own family, laughing. Clara Whitmore stood in the doorway of her father's study, invisible as always, listening to them plan her exile like it was dinner conversation. "Let's see how long that mountain man keeps her," her stepmother said, voice dripping with satisfaction. "A week, maybe 2, before he sends her back." More laughter. Cruel, bright laughter that had filled this house her entire life. But something in Clara's chest didn't break this time. It hardened, sharpened. If they wanted her gone, she'd go, but she'd never, ever come back. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's dive in. The house smelled like expensive flowers and cheaper perfume, a combination that had always made Clara's stomach turn. She pressed her back against the wall outside the study, the carved wood paneling cold through her thin dress, and made herself breathe slowly, evenly, the way she'd trained herself to breathe through 18 years of existing in spaces where she wasn't wanted. "Sign here, Whitmore." That was Mr. Carver, the family attorney. His voice had the satisfaction of a man completing an unpleasant task. "And here, the arrangement is quite unorthodox, but legal." Unorthodox. Her father's laugh was sharp. "That's generous, shipping my daughter off to some wilderness rancher like damaged goods. But what choice do we have? The girl's impossible." Clara's fingernails dug into her palms. She'd heard worse. Much worse. "Thomas, darling, don't be dramatic." Her stepmother Vivian's voice was sugar over poison. "It's a marriage, not a deportation. Though I suppose in the mountains, there's little difference." More laughter. "Poor Mr. Hale, I almost feel guilty." "Almost." Her father's chair creaked. "You orchestrated this entire thing." "Someone had to. Clara's 23 years old, Thomas. 23, and she's driven away every suitable man in 3 counties. Too opinionated, too stubborn, too difficult." Her half-sister Margaret finished. "She's difficult, Mother. Always has been. Remember when she embarrassed us at the governor's dinner, arguing with his son about worker conditions at a dinner party?" "I remember wanting to die of shame," Vivian said. The boy was being perfectly charming, and Clara had to lecture him about factory safety like some kind of radical. Clara closed her eyes. That dinner had been 2 years ago. The governor's son had been bragging about his family's textile mills, laughing about cutting corners on equipment maintenance. She'd asked, politely, she thought, if he considered the workers who'd lost fingers to faulty machinery. The room had gone silent. Her father had gripped her arm hard enough to bruise and hadn't spoken to her for a week. "Well, she's Mr. Hale's problem now," Vivian said. "A mountain rancher. Can you imagine? Our Clara, who can't even manage to smile properly at parties, trying to survive on some isolated ranch. She'll be begging to come home within a month. We won't take her back." Thomas Whitmore's voice was flat, final. "I've made that clear. This arrangement stands, regardless of how quickly it fails." Clara's breath caught. She'd suspected, but hearing it confirmed, hearing her own father seal her exile, felt like a fist closing around her lungs. "Oh, it'll fail," Margaret said cheerfully. "I met Mr. Hale once, at the livestock auction, remember? Big, rough-looking man, barely spoke. Can you imagine him married to Clara? It's almost funny." "It is funny," Vivian agreed. "The whole situation. Poor man asked for a wife through one of those settlement agencies, probably expecting some sweet farm girl, and instead he's getting our Clara. I wonder if we should warn him." "Too late for that," Mr. Carver said. Papers rustled. The contract signed. "Miss Whitmore leaves tomorrow." Tomorrow. Clara's hand found the wall behind her, steadying herself. Tomorrow. "Does she know?" Margaret asked. "She will in the morning," Thomas said. "I'll tell her at breakfast. No point in giving her time to make a scene." "She won't make a scene," Vivian said. "Clara never does. She just looks at you with those judgmental eyes and makes you feel like you've done something wrong. God, I won't miss that." "I won't miss her at all," Margaret added. "The house will be so much lighter without her lurking around, disapproving of everything." Clara turned and walked away before she could hear more. Her footsteps were silent on the thick carpet, years of practice moving through this house like a ghost. Up the servants' stairs, the ones the family pretended didn't exist. down the narrow hallway to her room, the smallest bedroom in the house, tucked in a corner where guests wouldn't accidentally find it. She closed the door and locked it. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her hands. They were shaking. She made them stop. Tomorrow. She had tonight to prepare, and she'd learned long ago not to waste time on tears that changed nothing. Clara stood and opened her wardrobe. Not much to pack. Her stepmother had made sure of that. Clara's clothing budget was a fraction of Margaret's, and most of what she owned was practical rather than fashionable. 3 plain dresses, 2 work skirts, a wool coat that had been her mother's, before the fever took her when Clara was 7, before Thomas Whitmore remarried 6 months later and brought Vivian and her daughter into their home, before everything changed. Clara pulled out her mother's old traveling trunk from under the bed. Dust coated the lid, but the lock still worked. Inside, wrapped in faded tissue paper, were the few things she'd kept hidden. Her mother's journal. A photograph of her parents on their wedding day, her mother laughing, her father looking at his bride like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Clara barely recognized him. She packed methodically. Clothing. Her own journal, filled with observations and thoughts she'd never speak aloud. The books her father didn't know she'd bought with money earned from tutoring the neighbors' children. Mathematics. Agricultural science. A treatise on modern irrigation techniques that had cost her 3 months of wages. Too opinionated, she whispered to the empty room. Too stubborn. Too difficult. She packed those words too. Wrapped them up and stored them away where they couldn't touch her anymore. The house settled into silence around her. Clara knew its rhythms. Vivian retired early with her laudanum and gossip papers. Margaret would be out at some party, wouldn't return until dawn. Her father would drink brandy in his study until midnight, then stumble to bed. No one would check on her. No one ever did. Clara changed into her nightdress and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Rowan Hale. She'd heard the name before. A year ago, maybe longer. Her father complaining about some rancher who'd refused to sell his water rights to the mining company Thomas had invested in. Stubborn bastard, he'd said, sitting on that mountain property like he owns the whole damn territory. He did own it, as far as Clara knew. She'd looked it up once in her father's land registry books, curious about the man who'd said no to Thomas Whitmore when no one else dared. Rowan Hale, 300 acres of mountain range with water rights that made the property nearly priceless. He'd inherited it from his father and somehow managed to keep it while bigger ranchers and mining companies circled like vultures. That took more than stubbornness. That took intelligence. Clara rolled onto her side and watched moonlight creep across her floor. What did a man like that want with a wife from a settlement agency? The mountain territories were isolated, she knew. Harsh winters, few neighbors. Maybe he was desperate. Maybe he was cruel. Maybe he was exactly what her family expected. Rough, uneducated, someone who'd take one look at her and realize he'd made a terrible mistake. She'd find out tomorrow. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, Clara felt something else. Something that had been building in her chest all evening, pressing against her ribs like a bird testing the bars of a cage. Hope. Maybe that made her foolish. Probably did. But sitting in this house, listening to her family laugh about her exile, Clara had realized something. Whatever waited for her on that mountain couldn't be worse than this. Being unwanted by a stranger seemed almost preferable to being unwanted by the people who were supposed to love her. At least with a stranger, she'd know where she stood. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara was already dressed, trunk packed, when the knock came. "Miss Clara?" It was Mary, one of the housemaids, older woman, kind eyes. She'd been with the family since before Clara's mother died. "Your father wants you in the breakfast room." "Thank you, Mary." Miss, Mary hesitated at the door. "I heard about the arrangement. I'm sorry." Clara managed a smile. "Don't be, I'm not." Mary's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded and left. The breakfast room was bright with morning sun, which felt wrong somehow. This conversation should happen in shadows. Clara's father sat at the head of the table, coffee in hand, newspaper open. Vivian picked at toast, and Margaret slumped in her chair, still half asleep from whatever party she'd attended. Clara sat, poured herself tea, waited. Her father cleared his throat. "Clara, we need to discuss your future." All right. You're aware, I'm sure, that your prospects here have been limited. Clara sipped her tea, said nothing. Your stepmother and I have arranged a marriage for you, a Mr. Rowan Hale. He owns a ranch in the mountain territories. You'll be leaving today. Margaret perked up, watching for Clara's reaction. Vivian's lips curved in a small, satisfied smile. Clara set down her cup carefully. Today? Yes, the afternoon train. Mr. Carver has arranged everything. Your trunk will be sent ahead. I see. Thomas frowned. That's all? No arguments? No protests? Clara met his eyes. Would they change anything? No. Then why waste breath on them? Vivian's smile faltered. Margaret looked almost disappointed. You'll be a rancher's wife, Vivian said. You understand what that means? Hard work, isolation, no society, no culture, just animals and dirt and… I understand, Clara said. You'll hate it, Margaret added. You'll be miserable. Clara looked at her half-sister, pretty, spoiled Margaret, who'd never worked a day in her life, who measured her worth in party invitations and suitors' compliments. Perhaps. You're not even upset, Vivian said, and Clara heard the irritation in her voice. They'd wanted a scene, tears, begging. Instead, they got Clara doing what Clara always did, accepting the situation and refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. I'm practical, Clara said. It's one of my many difficult qualities. Her father's jaw tightened. You'll write when you arrive. Let us know you're settled. Will you read the letters? Silence. I didn't think so. Clara stood. If that's everything, I should prepare. She left before they could respond, walking out of that bright breakfast room with her spine straight and her expression calm. Only when she reached her room did she let herself breathe. Mary was there, wringing her hands. I've had your trunk brought down, miss, and I've packed some extra things, food for the journey, some herbs, a warm shawl that was your mother's. I've been keeping it safe. Clara's throat tightened. Thank you. You're a good girl, Miss Clara. Don't let them make you think otherwise. Mary's eyes were wet. Your mother would be proud of you. Would she? Clara wasn't sure. Her memories of her mother were soft and fading, warmth, laughter, gentle hands braiding her hair. Would that woman be proud of the daughter Clara had become? Difficult, opinionated, too honest for her own good. Or would she understand that those qualities were armor, forged in the years after she died, when Clara learned that kindness was a luxury and truth was a weapon? I hope so, Clara whispered. The train station was chaos. Clara sat in the hired carriage, watching people rush past, families saying goodbye, businessmen checking pocket watches, children running between legs. Her father had sent her with Mr. Carver, too busy to see her off himself. Vivian and Margaret hadn't even bothered with excuses. Mr. Carver handed her a ticket and an envelope. Your documents, marriage contract, property deed information, Mr. Hale's details. Everything you need. Thank you. Miss Whitmore, he hesitated. This isn't my business, but your father, he's making a mistake. You're a clever girl, too clever for that family. Clara looked at him, surprised. I've handled their legal affairs for 20 years, he continued. I've seen how they treat you. It's not right. He tipped his hat. Good luck, miss. I think you'll do just fine. He left her there, standing on the platform with a trunk and a ticket and an envelope full of papers that made her someone's wife. Clara found her seat in the passenger car, third class, of course. Her father wouldn't waste money on comfort for a daughter he was shipping away. She didn't mind. The hard bench gave her something solid to focus on as the train lurched into motion and the city began to slide past the window. Buildings gave way to fields. Fields gave way to forests. The rhythmic clatter of the rails became hypnotic. Clara opened the envelope and read through the documents Mr. Carver had prepared. Marriage contract. Standard terms. She'd become Clara Hale upon arrival and signing. The property deed listed Rowan Hale as sole owner of 340 acres, including timber rights, water rights, and mineral rights. Valuable. No wonder her father's mining friends had tried to buy him out. There was a letter, too, single page, written in strong, clean handwriting. Miss Whitmore, I understand this arrangement is unusual. You don't know me, and I don't know you. I won't pretend to offer romance or comfort or any of the things women are supposed to want from marriage. What I can offer is honesty and respect. Life on the mountain is hard. Winters are harsh. The work is constant. I need a partner who can handle difficulty without breaking. Your father's attorney assured me you were capable and intelligent. I expect competence and honesty. In return, I'll give you the same. You'll have your own space, your own choices. I won't force anything you're not willing to give. If this isn't what you want, say so when you arrive. I'll arrange return passage, no questions asked. Rowan Hale. Clara read it 3 times. The words were careful, measured. No flowery promises, no false charm, just honesty. I won't force anything you're not willing to give. Her hands tightened on the paper. How many men would write that? How many would even think it? She folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in the envelope. Then she leaned her head against the window and watched the landscape change from gentle hills to something rougher, wilder. The train climbed steadily, and the air grew colder. Other passengers came and went at various stops. A family with 3 children. An older couple who argued in whispers. A young man who kept glancing at Clara until she met his eyes with such a flat, unwelcoming stare that he found somewhere else to sit. She'd gotten good at that. The look that said, "Don't." Hours passed. The sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Clara had never seen anything so beautiful. The city had its charms, theaters and museums and parks. But this was something else, something vast and indifferent and real. The train slowed as they approached a small station. Just a platform, really, and a weathered sign that read Pinewood Junction. "Last stop," the conductor called. "End of the line." Clara gathered her things. Her trunk had been unloaded already, sitting on the platform like an accusation. She stepped down from the train, and the cold hit her immediately. Sharp, clean air that smelled like pine and snow. The platform was nearly empty, an old man loading crates onto a wagon, a woman with a basket, meeting someone off the train, and at the far end, leaning against a post with his arms crossed, a man. Tall. That was Clara's first thought. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing work clothes and a heavy coat. Dark hair, longer than was fashionable. A face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the mountains, all hard angles and sharp lines. He wasn't handsome, exactly, but he was substantial, real. He pushed off from the post and walked toward her, and Clara made herself stand still, made herself meet his eyes. They were gray, storm cloud gray. "Miss Whitmore." His voice was deep, rough-edged. "Mr. Hale." He stopped a few feet away, giving her space, studying her the same way she was studying him. Clara wondered what he saw. A thin woman in a threadbare coat, not pretty enough to justify the trouble, not charming enough to make up for her difficult nature. "You came," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Wasn't sure. Most women wouldn't choose this." He gestured vaguely at the mountains, the wilderness, the whole impossible situation. "I didn't choose it," Clara said honestly. "But I'm here anyway." Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. "Honest. Good." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing and carried it to a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Clara followed, aware of the cold seeping through her coat, aware of the way the old man at the other wagon was watching them with undisguised curiosity. Small town. Everyone would know by morning that Rowan Hale's mail-order bride had arrived. The thought should have embarrassed her. Instead, Clara felt oddly detached. Let them talk. They didn't know her. Didn't matter. Rowan helped her into the wagon. His hand was warm, calloused, and then climbed up beside her. He clicked his tongue, and the horses started moving. They rode in silence. The road climbed steadily, leaving the small cluster of buildings behind. Trees closed in on both sides, tall pines that blocked what remained of the sunset. The temperature dropped further. Clara pulled her shawl tighter and tried not to shiver. "Cold?" Rowan asked. "I'll manage." He made a sound that might have been approval or amusement, she couldn't tell. Then he shrugged out of his coat and handed it to her. "I don't need—" "You're shaking. Take it." Clara hesitated, then accepted the coat. It smelled like wood smoke and leather and something else, something clean and masculine. She wrapped it around herself and immediately felt warmer. Thank you. Winters here will make this seem mild, Rowan said. You'll need proper cold weather gear. We'll sort that out tomorrow. We. Like it was already decided. Like she was already staying. Clara studied his profile as he drove. Strong jaw, covered in a few days' worth of stubble, lines around his eyes that suggested he spent a lot of time squinting into sun and wind. His hands on the reins were steady, confident. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "The arrangement. Why not just find someone local?" Rowan was quiet for a moment. "Tried that. Didn't work out." "Why not?" "Most women around here want things I can't give. Comfort, society, a life that doesn't involve mucking out stables and mending fences. And you think I'll be content with mucking out stables?" "No." He glanced at her. "I think you'll do what needs doing without complaining about it. There's a difference." Clara wasn't sure whether to be offended or complimented. "What makes you think that?" "Your father's attorney told me about you, said you were difficult, opinionated, argued with the governor's son about factory conditions." Another glance, and this time there was definitely approval in his expression. Sounded like someone who sees problems and wants them fixed. "I can use that." "You can use that?" "The ranch has problems," Rowan said bluntly. "Too much work for one person. Systems that need improving. I'm good at the physical work, but I don't see the patterns the way some people do. Don't think strategically." He turned the wagon onto an even narrower road, barely more than a track. "I need a partner who can do what I can't, someone smart enough to help me build something better." Clara stared at him. "Most men don't want their wives to think." "Most men are idiots." She laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound surprised both of them. Rowan's mouth curved slightly. "There, that's better. You looked like you were heading to a funeral." "Felt like it," Clara admitted. "Your family that bad?" "Yes." No elaboration, no excuses, just the truth. Rowan nodded like he understood perfectly. "Then this is better." The trees opened up suddenly, and Clara caught her breath. A valley spread out before them, carved between two mountain slopes. A river cut through the center, silver in the twilight. And there, nestled against the mountainside, was a house. Not large, not fancy, just a solid log structure with a stone chimney, smoke rising from it into the darkening sky. Outbuildings clustered nearby. Barn, stable, what looked like a workshop. Fences marked out pastures where Clara could see the shapes of cattle. It was rough, isolated. Probably uncomfortable and definitely difficult. It was also the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. "Home," Rowan said simply. He drove the wagon down into the valley, and Clara felt something in her chest loosen. Not quite hope, not yet, but something close. Maybe escape. Maybe possibility. Maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something that was actually hers. The house was warm inside, which surprised Clara. She'd expected cold stone and bare walls, the kind of rough bachelor-dwelling men created when left to their own devices. Instead, she stepped into a main room with a fire crackling in the hearth, simple furniture that looked handmade but sturdy, and unexpectedly, books. A whole shelf of them along one wall. Rowan set her trunk down and moved to add wood to the fire. "Kitchen's through there, bedrooms upstairs. There's a smaller room up there too if you want separate space." Clara heard what he wasn't saying. The choice was hers, share his bed or don't. He wouldn't push. "I'll take the smaller room," she said. "For now." "Fair enough." He straightened, brushing bark from his hands. "You hungry?" She was, Clara realized. Hadn't eaten since that awful breakfast with her family. "Yes." "I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage stew that won't kill you." "That's a low bar." His mouth twitched. "You cook better." "I cook adequately." "Then we'll take turns." "I'll handle tonight since you just got here." He moved toward the kitchen, then paused. "You want to see your room first? Get settled?" Clara nodded. Rowan picked up her trunk again and carried it up the narrow stairs. The smaller bedroom was just that, small. A single bed, a washstand, a window that looked out over the valley. The walls were bare logs, chinked tight against drafts. A rag rug covered the floor. It was nothing like her room at her father's house with its wallpaper and matching furniture. It was also completely, entirely hers. "It's perfect," Clara said quietly. Rowan looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she meant it. Whatever he saw in her face must have satisfied him because he nodded. "I'll get that stew started. Come down when you're ready." He left her alone. Clara sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her new space. Through the floorboard, she could hear Rowan moving around in the kitchen, the clink of pots, the creak of the stove door. Normal sounds. Domestic sounds. Clara unpacked slowly, finding places for her few belongings. Her dresses hung on pegs along one wall. Her books went on the small shelf by the bed. Her mother's journal she kept in the trunk along with the photograph. Some things were too precious to leave out where they might get damaged. When she came downstairs, Rowan had set the table. 2 bowls, 2 spoons, a loaf of bread that looked store-bought. The stew smelled better than Clara expected, meat and vegetables and something herbal she couldn't quite identify. They ate in silence for a while. The stew was good. Not fancy, but hearty and hot and exactly what Clara needed. "This is better than adequate," she said finally. "My mother's recipe. Only thing she taught me before she died." "I'm sorry." "Long time ago." Rowan tore off a piece of bread. "I was 12. Fever took her in 2 days. My father never really recovered. Threw himself into work instead of grief." Clara understood that. "My mother died when I was 7. Same thing, fever. My father remarried 6 months later." "That when things got bad?" "That's when things got bad." They finished eating. Clara started to clear the dishes, but Rowan waved her off. "You've been traveling all day. I'll handle it. I can help." "Didn't say you couldn't. Said you don't have to." He took the bowls to the kitchen. "Tomorrow you can start pulling your weight. Tonight, just settle in." Clara didn't know what to do with kindness that came without strings attached. She stood awkwardly in the main room looking at the books on the shelf. Agricultural journals, a few novels, a mathematics textbook that looked well used. "You read mathematics?" she called to the kitchen. "Enough to keep the accounts straight. Why, you any good at numbers?" "Better than adequate." She heard him laugh. An actual laugh, rough and surprised. "Starting to think your family was blind as well as stupid." Clara pulled out one of the agricultural journals and flipped through it. Articles on crop rotation, irrigation systems, livestock breeding. Someone had made notes in the margins, observations and questions in that same strong handwriting from Rowan's letter. He came back into the room, drying his hands on a towel, caught her reading his notes. "You think I'm wrong about the winter grazing rotation?" he asked, pointing to one margin note. "I think you're asking the right questions, but the answer isn't in this journal." "Where is it?" "In your land. Every property is different. What works for ranches in flat country won't work here." Clara traced one of his questions with her finger. "You need to observe your own patterns. Where do the cattle naturally cluster in winter? Where's the best shelter? Which pastures retain moisture longest?" Rowan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her. "You've studied this." "I've read about it, haven't applied it. There's a difference." "But you could. Apply it, I mean." Clara met his eyes. "I could try. That's all I'm asking." He straightened. "You should get some sleep. Morning comes early here." She was tired, Clara realized, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from a day of constant tension. "What time?" "Dawn. We'll start with the animals, then I'll show you around the property." "All right." Clara climbed the stairs to her small room. Through the thin walls, she could hear Rowan moving around, banking the fire, checking locks. Normal evening sounds in a house that was supposed to be her home now. She changed into her nightdress and slid under the quilts. They smelled like cedar and clean air. Outside, the wind moved through the pines with a sound like the ocean. Clara closed her eyes and waited for panic to hit. Waited to feel trapped, terrified, desperate to run back to the city and beg her family to take her back. The panic didn't come. Instead, she fell asleep to the sound of wind and silence and slept better than she had in years. Dawn arrived cold and gray. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and found her work clothes by touch in the dim light. When she came downstairs, Rowan was already dressed, drinking from a tin cup. "Coffee's on the stove," he said. "We've got about an hour of chores before breakfast." Clara poured herself a cup and followed him outside. The cold hit like a slap, stealing her breath. Frost covered everything, turning the valley into something crystalline and strange. Rowan handed her a heavy coat from a peg by the door. "Wear this. Yours won't cut it up here." It was too big, but warm. Clara wrapped it around herself and tried not to shiver. The barn was warmer, full of animal heat and the smell of hay. Rowan moved through the morning routine with practiced efficiency, feeding, checking water, mucking out stalls. He didn't tell Clara what to do, just handed her a pitchfork and let her figure it out. She'd never mucked a stall in her life. But she'd read about it, and watching Rowan made the mechanics clear enough. She started working, and he nodded approval. "You'll get blisters," he said. "I'll survive." "Didn't say you wouldn't." They worked in companionable silence. Clara's arms started aching after the first stall, burning by the third. She didn't stop. Wouldn't give Rowan any reason to think she couldn't handle this. Besides, there was something satisfying about the work. Physical, immediate, productive. She could see the results. Dirty stall became clean stall. Simple. When they finished, Rowan showed her the chickens. Collecting eggs was easier than mucking stalls, though the hens were surprisingly aggressive about defending their nests. "That one's mean," Rowan said, pointing to a particularly large red hen. "She's pecked me more times than I can count." "Why keep her?" "Best layer I've got. Sometimes the difficult ones are worth the trouble." Clara wasn't sure if he was still talking about chickens. Back in the house, Rowan cooked eggs and bacon while Clara washed the worst of the barn smell from her hands. Her muscles were screaming. She ignored them. "You did good," Rowan said, sliding eggs onto her plate. "Most people struggle their first day." "I'm struggling, just not complaining about it." "Yeah, I noticed." He sat across from her. "Your family really didn't prepare you for any of this, did they?" "They prepared me to marry well and host dinner parties. This wasn't part of the plan." "Their loss." 2 words. But the way Rowan said them, matter-of-fact and certain, made something warm unfold in Clara's chest. After breakfast, he took her on a tour of the property. They rode horses Clara hadn't ridden in years, but the mare Rowan gave her was patient with her rusty skills. They followed trails through the forest, crossed the river at a shallow ford, climbed to high pastures where cattle grazed. 340 acres, Rowan said, gesturing at the valley spread below them. "Most of it's usable, but I haven't figured out the best way to use it. I've been running cattle, but the margins are thin. Takes too much feed to get them through winter." Clara studied the landscape. "What about timber?" "There's demand. Mining operations need it, but sustainable harvesting takes planning I haven't done yet." "And the water rights?" "That's where the real value is." Rowan pointed to the river cutting through the valley. "Feeds into the main watershed. Mining companies have been trying to buy access for years. I keep saying no." "Why?" "Because once I sell those rights, I lose control. They'll dam it, divert it, pollute it. Everything downstream suffers." He turned his horse back toward the house. "My father taught me that land is more than property. It's responsibility. You take care of it, or it stops taking care of you." Clara thought about that as they rode. Thought about the way Rowan talked about the land, not as something to exploit, but as something to steward. It was the opposite of how her father approached business. Thomas Whitmore took what he wanted and moved on when the taking got hard. Back at the house, Clara spent the afternoon exploring while Rowan worked on repairing fence posts. She found the workshop fascinating, tools organized with almost military precision, half-finished projects that showed real craftsmanship, a rocking chair that just needed sanding, a set of shelves waiting for assembly. The house itself was surprisingly well organized for a bachelor household. Clean dishes, swept floors, everything in its place. Rowan clearly valued order. Clara started making mental notes, things that could be improved, systems that could be streamlined. The kitchen storage was inefficient. The root cellar needed better ventilation. The chicken coop could be expanded. She was still making notes when Rowan came in, covered in dirt and looking exhausted. "Find everything you need?" he asked. "I found things that need fixing." He raised an eyebrow. "That was fast." "You said you needed someone who could see problems." Clara showed him her list. "These are the obvious ones. I'm sure there are more." Rowan read through her notes carefully. His expression didn't change, but Clara saw his jaw tighten. "Did I offend you?" she asked. "No, just most people wouldn't notice half of this. and the ones who would notice wouldn't mention it. He looked at her. You really do just say what you think, don't you? Would you prefer I didn't? I'd prefer exactly what you're doing. He handed back her notes. We'll start working through these, but not today. Today I need food and sleep, in that order. They fell into a routine over the next few days. Up at dawn, morning chores, work on whatever project Rowan had planned, afternoon chores, dinner, sleep. The work was hard and constant, but Clara found she didn't mind. Every night she fell into bed exhausted, and every morning she woke up knowing exactly what needed doing. No pretending, no performing, just work. Her hands developed blisters, then calluses. Her muscles stopped screaming and started just aching. She learned which chickens to avoid and which cows kicked, learned to read weather in the clouds and predict rain by the way the wind smelled. Rowan was a good teacher, patient, thorough, never condescending. When Clara made mistakes, he showed her the correct way without making her feel stupid. When she had ideas, he listened. Actually, listened. It was intoxicating. A week into her arrival, Claire reorganized the kitchen storage based on frequency of use and cooking workflow. Rowan came in for lunch, stopped, and stared. You rearranged everything. Is that a problem? He opened a cabinet, found what he needed immediately, and closed it. No, it's better, much better. How did you... I watched how you cook. You were wasting time moving between stations. This reduces unnecessary steps. Rowan leaned against the counter, looking at her like she'd performed magic. You watched how I cook? Of course. How else would I know what needed changing? Clara. He said her name carefully, like he was testing the weight of it. Most people don't pay that kind of attention. Then most people are inefficient. He laughed. That same rough, surprised laugh that Clara was starting to really like. Yeah, they are. That night, after dinner, Rowan pulled out the ranch accounts. Ledgers filled with his careful handwriting, tracking income and expenses, profit and loss. I need help, he said bluntly. I can track the numbers, but I can't make sense of the patterns. Can't figure out where I'm losing money. Clara took the ledgers and started reading. It didn't take long to spot the problems. Your feed costs are too high, she said. You're buying when prices peak instead of stocking up during low periods, and you're not accounting for seasonal variation in cattle weight. You should be selling in early fall when they're heaviest, not late fall when they've already started losing condition. Rowan stared at the numbers like they'd betrayed him. How did I miss that? You were focused on the daily details. Sometimes you need distance to see the pattern. Can you fix it? Clara looked at him. I can try, but I'll need to understand the whole operation. Every aspect, income, expenses, labor costs, market prices. Done. It's yours. Just like that? Just like that. Rowan closed the ledger. I told you I needed a partner who could do what I can't. You just proved you can. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara dove into the ranch's finances. She created new tracking systems, identified inefficiencies, and started building a comprehensive picture of the operation. Rowan gave her complete access to everything and answered her questions without hesitation. She discovered he'd been undercharging for timber sales, leaving money on the table because he didn't know the market rates. Fix that. Found he was paying too much for equipment repairs that he could do himself with the right tools. Fix that too. Every evening they'd sit together, going over what Clara had found. Rowan would listen, ask questions, and implement her suggestions without ego or resistance. It was the strangest partnership Clara had ever experienced. No fighting for control, no dismissing her ideas because she was a woman. Just two people working toward the same goal. She kept waiting for the trap. For Rowan to reveal himself as just another man who wanted a woman to shut up and obey. But it never came. One afternoon, Claire was in the barn checking inventory when she heard voices outside. Rowan's and someone else's. A woman's voice, high and sweet. Clara stepped to the barn door and saw a buggy pulled up to the house. A young woman in an expensive dress stood talking to Rowan, smiling brightly. Pretty in a delicate porcelain doll way that Clara had never managed to achieve. I heard you'd gotten married, the woman was saying. I had to come see for myself. Rowan Hale, married. I never thought I'd see the day. Sarah, Rowan's voice was carefully neutral. This is unexpected. I know. I should have sent word. But I was passing through and Sarah trailed off as she noticed Clara. Her smile faltered. Oh, you must be the wife. Clara walked over, very aware of the hay in her hair and the dirt on her work dress. Clara Hale. And you are? Sarah Brennan. Rowan and I are old friends. She turned back to Rowan, deliberately excluding Clara. I was so surprised when I heard. A mail-order bride? You could have had anyone, Rowan. Why would you? Because I needed someone who could work, Rowan interrupted. Not someone who'd break a nail feeding chickens. Sarah's laugh was forced. Work? How practical. But marriage is about more than work, isn't it? Companionship, affection. Sarah, Rowan's voice went flat. Why are you really here? The sweet smile cracked slightly. I wanted to see you. Is that so terrible? We were close once before you decided that this isolated ranch was more important than what? Than you? Rowan crossed his arms. You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with ranch life. That you'd only marry me if I sold the land and moved to the city. I said no. You left. That was 5 years ago. People change, Rowan. I've changed. I realize now that I was too hasty, too young to understand what really matters. What really matters, Clara said quietly, is honesty. And it seems like you're being anything but. Sarah turned on her, eyes flashing. I'm sorry, but this is a private conversation between old friends. Perhaps you should leave, Rowan said. Not loud, not angry, just final. I'm married, Sarah. Happily. And you showing up here pretending you've had some kind of revelation isn't changing that. Happily? Sarah's laugh was bitter now. With her? Rowan, look at her. She's covered in dirt. She looks like a field hand. She's not even pretty. She's standing right here, Clara said, her voice ice. And she's perfectly capable of defending herself. But since we're being honest, let me make something clear. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you and Rowan were to each other. I care about this ranch and the work we're doing here. If you can't respect that, then yes, you should leave. Sarah stared at her, shocked into silence. Rowan stepped closer to Clara, not touching her, but the message was clear. You heard my wife. Time to go, Sarah. Sarah climbed back into her buggy, face flushed with anger and humiliation. You'll regret this, Rowan. You're wasting yourself out here with someone who can't even appreciate what she has. She drove away fast, wheels kicking up dust. Rowan and Clara stood in silence until the buggy disappeared. Sorry about that, Rowan said finally. Don't be. She wasn't wrong about me looking like a field hand. She was wrong about everything else. He turned to face her. I meant what I said. This marriage, I'm happy with it, with you. Clara's heart did something complicated in her chest. Even though I'm difficult and opinionated and not pretty? Especially because of that. Rowan's gray eyes were steady on hers. Sarah wanted me to be someone I'm not. You just let me be. And you're building something here with me instead of trying to tear it down. That matters more than pretty. I'm happy too, Clara said softly. Happier than I've been in years. Maybe ever. Something passed between them. A shift. A recognition. Rowan reached out slowly, giving Clara time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched her face, calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. Can I kiss you? He asked. Clara's breath caught. Yes. He kissed her carefully, like she might break. Clara kissed him back less carefully and felt him smile against her mouth. When they broke apart, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. We should probably go inside, he said, before the neighbors start talking. There are no neighbors for miles. Good point. He kissed her again. That night, Clara didn't sleep in the small bedroom. She moved her things into Rowan's room, into their room, and discovered that partnership could extend to more than just work. That respect could turn into something warmer, deeper. That difficult women and quiet men could find something together that neither had found anywhere else. The next morning, Clara woke to sunlight streaming through different windows and Rowan's steady breathing beside her. She looked around the room, his clothes mixed with hers, his books on the nightstand next to hers, and felt something settle in her chest. Home. This was home. Not because it was perfect or easy, but because it was honest, real, hers, 3 months into the marriage, Clara had transformed the ranch's accounting system completely. She sat at the kitchen table with ledgers spread around her, coffee going cold at her elbow, when Rowan came in from morning chores covered in mud. "Creek's flooding," he said, dropping his hat on the peg. "Lost about 20 feet of fence line near the north pasture." Clara looked up from the numbers. "The posts I told you needed replacing last month?" "Yeah." Rowan scrubbed a hand over his face. "You were right. Should have listened. Should have insisted harder." Clara closed the ledger. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough we'll need to move the cattle before they wander off. And I'll need to rebuild that whole section." He poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "What are you working on?" "Timber contracts. I think we're leaving money on the table. We're already selling timber. To the wrong buyers at the wrong prices." Clara turned the ledger so he could see her calculations. "The mining operations buy through a middleman who takes 30%. If we sell directly, cut out the intermediary, we increase profit significantly." Rowan studied the numbers. "The middleman is Jack Brennan, Sarah's father." "I know. He's not going to like losing that contract." "I don't particularly care what he likes," Claire said. "The question is whether you care." Rowan was quiet for a moment. "He's got influence in town. Could make things difficult." "More difficult than losing 30% of our timber revenue?" "No." Rowan tapped the ledger. "Do it. Make the changes. I'll deal with Brennan." Clara had expected more resistance. "Just like that?" "Just like that?" He stood, wincing slightly. "You've been right about everything else. Why would this be different?" She watched him move to the stove, favoring his left side. "You're hurt." "Just bruised. Fence post fell on me." "Let me see." "It's fine." "Rowan." Clara used the voice that made him stop and listen. "Let me see." He pulled off his shirt reluctantly. A massive bruise was blooming across his ribs, dark purple already turning black at the edges. Clara stood and pressed gently around the injury, checking for breaks. Rowan hissed when she hit a tender spot. "You might have cracked a rib," she said. "Wouldn't be the first time." "That doesn't make it better." She went to the cabinet where they kept medical supplies, another thing she'd organized. "Sit down. I need to wrap this." Rowan obeyed, and Clara carefully bound his ribs with strips of cloth. Her hands were steady, efficient. She'd learned basic medical care from books and necessity. Up here, the nearest doctor was a 2-hour ride. "You're good at this," Rowan said quietly. "I'm competent at it. There's a difference." "You're good at everything you try." Clara tied off the bandage. "I'm good at learning. That's not the same as being naturally talented. It's better." Rowan caught her hand before she could step away. "Natural talent is easy. Learning takes work and stubbornness." "So I'm stubborn now?" "You've always been stubborn. It's one of your best qualities." He pulled her closer, carefully because of his ribs, along with being difficult and opinionated. Clara smiled despite herself. "You have strange taste in women." "I have excellent taste in women." He kissed her, gentle and thorough. "Even if she does reorganize my entire life without asking first." "You told me to." "I know. Best decision I ever made." They stayed like that for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing together. Then Rowan's stomach growled loudly enough to make them both laugh. "I should feed you," Clara said. "You should feed both of us. You've been working since dawn." They made lunch together, moving around the kitchen with the easy coordination they'd developed over months of shared space. Clara sliced bread while Rowan heated yesterday's stew. Simple, domestic, ordinary. Clara had never been happier. After lunch, she rode into town to meet with the mining operations directly. Pinewood Junction was small. One main street, a handful of shops, a saloon, and the land office. People stared as Clara dismounted in front of the mining company's office. A woman alone, wearing work clothes, conducting business without a male escort. Let them stare. Inside, a clerk looked up from his desk and frowned. "Can I help you, miss?" "Mrs. Hale," Clara corrected. "I'm here to speak with Mr. Patterson about timber contracts." "Mr. Patterson is busy." "Then I'll wait." Clara sat in the chair by the door and pulled out the contract proposals she'd prepared. "I have all afternoon." The clerk looked flustered. "Ma'am, perhaps you should have your husband." My husband is repairing flood damage. I handle contracts. Clara didn't look up from her papers. Please tell Mr. Patterson that I'm here. Unless you'd prefer I take our business to the logging operation in Black Creek instead. The clerk disappeared into the back office. Clara heard muffled conversation, then footsteps. Mr. Patterson emerged, a broad man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and expensive clothes. Mrs. Hale, this is unexpected. Mr. Patterson. Clara stood and offered her hand. He shook it after a brief hesitation. I'd like to discuss our timber arrangement. I thought we dealt with Brennan for that. You did. Now you'll deal with me. Clara laid out her proposal on his desk. These are our terms for direct sale. No intermediary. Better prices for both of us. Patterson studied the numbers. His expression shifted from skeptical to interested. Brennan won't be happy about this. That's between you and Brennan. Are you interested in better prices or not? You're quite direct. I don't see the point in being otherwise. We have timber. You need timber. This arrangement benefits us both more than the current system. Patterson leaned back in his chair. Your husband know you're doing this? He told me to do this. Unusual man. He's a practical man, as am I. Clara tapped the contract. Do we have a deal? Patterson picked up his pen. We have a deal, Mrs. Hale, though I suspect you've just made yourself some enemies in this town. I suspect I already had them. She left the office with a signed contract and rode back to the ranch feeling grimly satisfied. Rowan was right. Brennan would be furious, but the numbers didn't lie. They'd increased timber revenue by nearly 40% with this change. Back home, she found Rowan in the barn, moving slower than usual because of his ribs, but refusing to stop working. You're supposed to be resting, Clara said. Can't rest. Too much to do. He straightened carefully. How'd it go in town? Clara handed him the signed contract. Rowan read it, and something like pride crossed his face. You did it. I did what needed doing. Brennan's going to come here. You know that, right? I'm counting on it. Clara leaned against a stall door. Better to face it now than let it fester. Rowan studied her. You're not worried. I'm terrified. But I'm also tired of people assuming I'll back down because I'm a woman. Clara met his eyes. If he comes here looking for a fight, he'll get one. Good. Rowan closed the distance between them. Because I'll be standing right beside you. Jack Brennan showed up 3 days later with 2 of his ranch hands. Clara was in the garden when she heard horses approaching. She set down her spade and walked to meet them, wiping dirt from her hands. Brennan was a large man, running to fat now, but still imposing. His face was red with anger as he dismounted. Where's Hale? He demanded. Right here. Rowan emerged from the barn, Clara's shotgun cradled in his arms. Not pointing it at anyone, just holding it, making a point. Brennan's eyes narrowed. You planning to shoot me, Hale? Depends on why you're here. Rowan's voice was mild. If it's a social visit, we can talk civilized. If you're here to make trouble, well, he patted the shotgun. I'm prepared for that too. You cut me out of the timber contract. My wife renegotiated our business arrangements. That's not the same thing. Your wife. Brennan turned his glare on Clara. You got a lot of nerve, lady, coming into this territory and messing with established deals. The deal was costing us money, Clara said calmly. I corrected that. You corrected nothing. You interfered. That contract was mine. The contract was a middleman's commission that neither party needed. Clara walked closer, unafraid. You were taking 30% for doing nothing but passing papers back and forth. That's not business. That's theft. Brennan's face went darker. You better watch your mouth. Or what? Clara's voice was ice. You'll threaten me? Intimidate me? I grew up with people who are experts at that, Mr. Brennan. You don't scare me. Maybe I should. Brennan took a step toward her. Rowan moved faster than Clara had ever seen him move. Suddenly, he was between them, shotgun no longer casual in his grip. That's far enough, Rowan said quietly. The ranch hands behind Brennan shifted nervously. This was escalating faster than any of them wanted. Brennan held up his hands, but his expression was ugly. You're making a mistake, Hale. I've got friends, influence. I can make your life very difficult. You can try, Rowan said. But my wife's got the law on her side. Contract was renegotiated legally. Patterson signed willingly. You've got no ground to stand on. I've got plenty of ground, and when you come into town, when you need supplies or services, you're going to find doors closed. People remember who their friends are, and people remember who tries to bully them, Claire said. You think you're the first person to threaten me, Mr. Brennan? I've been threatened by better people than you. It didn't work then. It won't work now. Brennan stared at her like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. You really are as difficult as they say. Worse, probably. Clara smiled, sharp and cold. And I'm not going anywhere. So you can either accept the new arrangement or you can waste your energy trying to fight it. Your choice. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Brennan turned and climbed back on his horse. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, Rowan replied. Go home, Jack. Before you do something we'll all regret. Brennan and his men rode away, leaving dust and tension behind them. Clara waited until they were out of sight before she let herself exhale. Her hands were shaking. She tucked them behind her back so Rowan wouldn't see. You all right? Rowan asked. Fine. Clara, she turned to face him. I'm scared. Is that what you want to hear? I'm scared of what he might do. Scared. I just made everything worse. Scared I'm going to ruin everything you've built here. Rowan pulled her close, careful of his ribs. You're not ruining anything. You're making it better. And you're right. He's got no legal ground, just bluster. Bluster can still do damage. Maybe, but we'll handle it. He kissed the top of her head. Together. That word again. Together. Clara let herself lean into him, just for a moment. Then she straightened. We have work to do. Always, Rowan smiled. Come on. Those fence posts won't replace themselves. Over the next few weeks, Brennan made good on his threat. The general stores started charging them higher prices. The blacksmith suddenly got too busy to take their repair work. At the saloon, conversation stopped when Rowan walked in. Small-town politics. Clara had expected it. What she hadn't expected was the support that came from unexpected places. Mrs. Chen, who ran the boarding house, stopped Clara on the street one afternoon. Mrs. Hale, I heard what you did with that timber contract. Clara braced for criticism. Yes? Good for you. Mrs. Chen smiled. Brennan's been squeezing everyone for years. About time someone stood up to him. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? You did smart business. People respect that. Well, she amended, some people respect that, the ones worth knowing. Other shopkeepers started nodding to Clara when she passed. The postmaster saved her a newspaper. A farmer whose land bordered theirs stopped by to ask her advice on irrigation. Slowly, Clara realized something. The people Brennan had intimidated into silence were watching to see if she'd break. When she didn't, when she kept coming to town and conducting business with her head high, they started treating her differently. Not as Rowan's difficult wife, as Clara Hale, who knew her own mind and didn't apologize for it. The turning point came 6 weeks after the confrontation. Clara was at the land office researching water rights when she overheard two men talking. Brennan's trying to buy up the Morrison property, one said. Going to dam the creek, sell the water rights to the mines. That'll dry up half the farms downstream. Morrison doesn't care. He's selling cheap and getting out. Clara's mind raced. The Morrison property bordered theirs on the east side. If Brennan dammed that creek, it would affect their water access too. She found Rowan at the blacksmith's, the one place in town that still treated them fairly because old Sam didn't care about Brennan's politics. We need to talk, Clara said. Now. Back at the ranch, she laid out what she'd heard. Rowan's expression went dark. If he dams that creek, we lose access to the eastern pastures, he said. I know, and there's nothing illegal about it. Morrison owns the land, has the right to sell. So what do we do? Clara had been thinking about this all the way home. We buy it first. We don't have that kind of money. We do if we take out a loan against our timber contracts. Clara pulled out her ledgers. With the new direct sales arrangement, we can show steady, increased income. Any bank would lend to us. That's a big risk. So is losing our water rights. Clara looked at him. You taught me that land is responsibility, that we take care of it or it stops taking care of us. This is us taking care of it. Rowan studied the numbers. Clara could see him calculating, weighing options. Morrison's asking $3,000, he said finally. We'd need to borrow at least half that. I know. If the timber sales fall through, we'd lose everything. They won't fall through. I've already secured contracts through next year. You're sure about this? Clara met his eyes. I'm sure that if we don't do this, Brennan will, and he'll use it to strangle us. This isn't just about buying land. It's about protecting what we've built. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, let's do it. The next day they went to the bank together. The banker, Mr. Whitfield, was skeptical at first. A rancher looking to expand during hard times seemed foolish. Then Clara showed him the ledgers, the increased timber revenue, the detailed projections, the contracts already in place. You did all this? Whitfield asked, looking at Clara with new respect. We did all this, Clara corrected, nodding toward Rowan. My husband handles the land management. I handle the business operations. And together we're building something sustainable, Rowan added. Not just profitable, but responsible. Whitfield studied them both. I have to admit, Mrs. Hale, you're not what I expected when I heard Rowan had gotten married. I'm not what anyone expected, Clara said. That seems to work in our favor. They got the loan. $2,000 at reasonable interest, secured against their timber contracts and existing property. With their savings, it was just enough. Clara sent a message to Morrison that same afternoon. They wanted to discuss purchasing his property. Morrison was an older man, tired and worn down by years of hard farming. He met them at his house, suspicion clear on his face. Brennan's already made an offer, he said. I know, Clara replied. We'd like to make a better one. She laid out their proposal. Same price Brennan offered, but with additional terms. Morrison could stay in his house through the winter, they'd help him transport his belongings when he was ready to move, and they'd maintain the family cemetery on the property in perpetuity. Morrison's eyes grew wet at that last part. My wife's buried there. My daughter. We know, Rowan said quietly, and we'll make sure it's always cared for. Morrison looked between them. Why? Why do all this when you could just buy the land and do whatever you want with it? Because that's not what land is for, Clara said. It's not just property to exploit. It's responsibility, legacy. You built something here, Mr. Morrison. We want to honor that. Morrison signed the papers that evening. By morning, word had spread through town that the Hales had bought the Morrison property out from under Jack Brennan. When Brennan found out, his rage was spectacular. He came to the ranch again, this time alone, his face purple with fury. You think you're clever, he snarled at Clara. Think you can waltz in here and upset the whole order of things. I don't think anything, Clara said calmly. I just did what needed doing. You made an enemy, lady, a powerful enemy. I've had powerful enemies before. I'm still here. Brennan stepped closer, looming over her. You're going to regret this. I doubt that. Clara didn't back down, didn't flinch. But you might want to ask yourself why you're so angry about a business transaction, unless there's something else going on. Something you're not saying. His hand moved fast. Rowan was faster. He grabbed Brennan's wrist before it could reach Clara, his grip iron hard. Touch my wife, Rowan said softly, dangerously, and I'll break every bone in your hand. Brennan tried to pull free. Couldn't. You're both going to pay for this. With what? Clara asked. You've tried intimidation, tried threats. You've turned people against us in town, and it didn't work. We're still here, still building, still succeeding. What exactly are you going to do that hasn't already failed? Brennan wrenched his hand free and stormed off, but Clara saw something in his face that made her uneasy. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, lying in bed with Rowan's arm around her, Clara stared at the ceiling. I pushed him too hard, she said quietly. I made him desperate. You stood your ground. That's not the same thing. Desperate men do stupid things. Yeah, Rowan pulled her closer. But we'll handle it. Whatever comes, we'll handle it together. Together. That word that had become Clara's anchor, her foundation. She closed her eyes and tried to believe it would be enough. 2 weeks later, 3 of their best cattle turned up dead in the north pasture, poisoned by something mixed into their feed. The fence line near the Morrison property was cut in the night, letting 30 head wander off before they could be rounded up. and someone started a rumor in town that Clara had cheated Morrison out of his land, taken advantage of an old man who didn't know better. Brennan was escalating, and Clara knew with cold certainty that this was just the beginning. The dead cattle were just the start. Over the next 3 weeks, tools went missing from the barn. A grain storage shed caught fire in the middle of the night, and someone spread manure across the path leading to their property line. Small, vicious acts designed to wear them down. Clara documented everything. She kept a journal with dates, times, descriptions, evidence. "We could go to the sheriff," Rowan said one morning, examining another cut fence line. "And say what? That we suspect Jack Brennan is sabotaging us with no proof?" Clara crouched beside the damage. "This was done with wire cutters, same as the last 3 times, but we didn't see who did it. Everyone knows it's him." Knowing and proving are different things. Clara stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "The sheriff won't act on suspicion, especially not against someone with Brennan's influence." Rowan's jaw tightened. "So we just let him keep attacking us?" "No, we wait for him to make a real mistake, something we can prove." It was the practical answer, the smart answer. But it tasted like ash in Clara's mouth. She was tired of waiting, tired of defending, tired of playing by rules that men like Brennan never followed. They were repairing the fence when they heard horses. Not just 1 or 2, at least 6 riders approaching from the direction of town. Rowan reached for the rifle he'd started keeping close. Clara touched his arm. "Wait, let's see what this is first." The riders came into view. At the front was a woman Clara didn't recognize. Tall, older, wearing a riding habit that spoke of money and good taste. Behind her were several men, and to Clara's surprise, Mr. Whitfield from the bank. The woman dismounted with practiced ease. "Mrs. Hale? Mr. Hale?" "That's us," Clara said carefully. "Catherine Morrison. James Morrison was my brother-in-law." She had sharp eyes that took in everything. The cut fence, Rowan's defensive posture, Clara's wary expression. "I came as soon as I heard about the property sale. I wanted to meet the people who promised to care for the family cemetery." Clara relaxed fractionally. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm sorry for your family's loss. James wrote to me before he signed the papers, told me about your offer, about the terms you proposed." Catherine's gaze moved between them. "He said you treated him with more respect than anyone had in years, that you saw the land as something to steward, not just exploit." "That's how we see it," Rowan said. "I'm glad to hear that, because I've been hearing other things in town. Disturbing things." Catherine gestured to the riders behind her. "Mr. Whitfield here tells me you've been experiencing difficulties." Whitfield dismounted, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Morrison asked me about your loan, about the property purchase. When I mentioned the rumors circulating about fraud, she wanted to know more." "There was no fraud," Clara said sharply. "Your brother-in-law signed those papers willingly. We paid fair market value and added terms specifically to protect his interests." "I know that," Catherine said. "I read the contract. It's exceptionally fair, which is why the rumors being spread are so obviously false." She turned to face the cut fence. "And why I suspect Jack Brennan is behind more than just gossip." Clara and Rowan exchanged glances. "You know Brennan?" Clara asked. "Unfortunately, he tried to court my daughter years ago. When she refused him, he spread vicious lies about her reputation. Cost her a good marriage prospect before we could set the record straight." Catherine's expression hardened. "The man is a vindictive child in a grown man's body, and he doesn't take rejection well." "We've noticed," Rowan said dryly. "I imagine you have, which is why I'm here." Catherine turned back to them. "I own property in 3 territories. I have investments in mining, timber, and cattle. I also have lawyers who are very good at their jobs. If Brennan is harassing you, I can help." Clara studied the older woman. "Why would you help us? You don't know us." "Because James trusted you, and because I'm tired of men like Brennan using money and influence to bully people." Catherine smiled, and it was razor sharp. "Also, I find I like you, Mrs. Hale. You remind me of myself at your age. Too smart for most people's comfort and unwilling to pretend otherwise." Despite everything, Clara found herself smiling back. "That's an accurate description." "I thought it might be." Catherine gestured to her riders. "These gentlemen are witnesses. If you'll allow it, I'd like them to document the damage to your property. Create an official record." "You think we'll need it?" Rowan asked. "I think Brennan is escalating, and when he does something truly stupid, which he will, you'll want evidence that establishes a pattern of harassment." Catherine's voice was crisp, businesslike. "Trust me, I've dealt with his type before. They always overreach eventually." Over the next 2 hours, Catherine's men photographed and documented every instance of sabotage Clara had recorded in her journal. They measured the cut fences, examined the burned grain shed, took statements from both Clara and Rowan. Catherine watched it all with sharp attention, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated a thorough understanding of ranch operations and property law. When they finished, she accepted Clara's offer of coffee. They sat in the kitchen while Rowan went to check on the cattle. "You've done impressive work here," Catherine said, looking at Clara's ledgers spread across the table. "These accounting systems are more sophisticated than what I see from most ranch operations. I like organization. You like efficiency. There's a difference." Catherine sipped her coffee. "How did a woman with your skills end up married to a mountain rancher through a settlement agency?" Clara hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "My family wanted me gone. I was too difficult, too opinionated. They thought shipping me off to someone who'd regret taking me was a fitting punishment. And instead I found someone who values those qualities instead of being threatened by them." Catherine smiled. "Good. Too many capable women waste themselves trying to be less threatening to fragile men." She set down her cup. "I meant what I said about helping. I'll leave one of my lawyer's cards. If Brennan does anything actionable, contact him immediately." "Why are you really doing this?" Clara asked. "The truth." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Because 20 years ago, I was you. Smart, capable, married to a good man who respected my mind. And I watched influential men try to destroy us because we didn't play by their rules. We survived, but barely. If I can help someone else avoid that fight, I will." She stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Be careful. Brennan's pride has been wounded publicly multiple times now, first with the timber contract, then with the Morrison property. Men like that don't just want to win, they want to punish anyone who made them look foolish." After Catherine and her men left, Clara sat alone in the kitchen, thinking. Rowan came in to find her staring at the lawyer's card. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm thinking about patterns, about how Brennan operates." "And?" "He's been attacking our property, our reputation, but he hasn't actually accused us of anything directly. He's letting rumors spread while keeping his own hands clean. Smart, cowardly, but smart. It also means he's planning something bigger, something he can blame on us or make look like our fault." Clara tapped the card against the table. "What would hurt us most? What would give him maximum damage?" Rowan sat across from her. "Water rights. If he could prove we were somehow violating water usage laws, damaging downstream access, he could force a sale, claim we're mismanaging a public resource." Clara's mind raced. That's why he wanted the Morrison property so badly. Not just to dam the creek, but to control access to the whole watershed, which we now control instead. Exactly. So how does he take that back? Clara stood and went to the maps they kept of the property. What if he doesn't take it back? What if he just makes it worthless to us? Rowan joined her at the maps. "You think he'd poison the water?" "I think he'd do something to make it look like we poisoned it, frame us for environmental damage, get the authorities involved, force us to sell to pay fines or legal fees." "That's a serious accusation." "I know, but look at the pattern. Everything he's done has been designed to make us look incompetent or dishonest. Dead cattle could be blamed on our poor management. The fire could be carelessness. The rumors about Morrison are fraud accusations." Clara traced the creek line on the map. "What's the next logical step for a man who wants to destroy us?" "Make us look like criminals." Rowan's expression went dark. "We need to protect the water access. Make sure there's no way he can contaminate it and blame us." They spent the next 3 days securing every water source on their property. They built locked gates around the main creek access points, posted notices about their water management practices, and documented everything. Clara even convinced Mr. Whitfield to send a bank inspector to verify their land usage was responsible and legal. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling they were missing something, some angle they hadn't considered. The answer came a week later, but not from Brennan. Clara was in town buying supplies when she overheard two women talking outside the general store. "Did you hear? Someone filed a claim saying the Hales property line is wrong, that they stole 20 acres from the Morrison estate." "Who filed it?" "Some mining company. Said they had original survey documents showing the boundary was different than what the current deed shows." Clara's blood went cold. She abandoned her shopping and went straight to the land office. The clerk confirmed it. A mining company called Summit Resources had filed a boundary dispute, claiming the Hales' property encroached on land that should have reverted to public access when Morrison sold. "This is ridiculous," Clara said, trying to keep her voice level. "We have a clear deed. The property was surveyed properly. They say they have older documents, original territorial surveys from before statehood." The clerk looked uncomfortable. "There's going to be a hearing. The judge will review both sets of documents and make a determination." "When?" 2 weeks. Clara left the land office with her hands shaking. She rode home hard and found Rowan in the barn. "We have a problem," she said, and explained about the boundary dispute. Rowan listened, his expression growing darker. "Summit Resources. Never heard of them." "Neither have I, but I'm willing to bet if we dig deep enough, we'll find Brennan's money behind it." "A shell company. Harder to prove his involvement." "Exactly." Clara paced the barn. "If they win the dispute, we lose 20 acres, including the main creek access point. Without that water, the Morrison property becomes nearly useless. Which means we can't sustain the larger herd, can't fulfill our timber contracts, and default on the bank loan. And have to sell everything just to cover our debts." Clara stopped pacing. "It's brilliant, vicious and underhanded, but brilliant. He's not attacking us directly. He's using the legal system to destroy us. Can we fight it? We can try. But judges in territorial disputes tend to favor original survey documents over later deeds. If they have legitimate papers from the territorial period, we're in trouble." Clara nodded. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling over them. "Catherine Morrison said Brennan would overreach," Clara said finally. "Maybe this is it. A boundary dispute based on fake documents." "You think they're fake?" "I think it's convenient that documents nobody's seen in 30 years suddenly appear right when Brennan needs them." Clara's mind was already working through possibilities. "We need to see those papers, examine them ourselves." "How?" "The hearing is public. The documents will be entered as evidence. We'll get our chance." The 2 weeks until the hearing were tense. Clara spent every spare moment researching territorial survey methods, property law, and document authentication. She wrote to Catherine Morrison, who sent her own lawyers to review the case. She contacted the original surveyor who'd mapped the Morrison property, now retired but willing to testify. Rowan kept the ranch running while Clara built their defense. They barely slept. The stress was eating at both of them. 3 nights before the hearing, Clara sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, her eyes burning with exhaustion. "You need to rest," Rowan said, setting a cup of tea beside her. "I need to find something we can use. Some proof that these documents are fraudulent." "What if they're not? What if they're real and we actually are in the wrong?" Clara looked up at him. "Do you believe that?" "No, but what I believe and what I can prove are different things." Rowan sat beside her. "We might lose this, Clara. We need to prepare for that." "I won't accept that." Her voice was fierce. "We did everything right. We bought this property legally. We've managed it responsibly. We've broken no laws. I won't let Brennan take it from us through lies and manipulation. Sometimes the liars win." "Not this time." Clara grabbed his hand. "I grew up watching powerful people destroy anyone who challenged them. I ran from that. But I'm done running. If Brennan wants a fight, he'll get one, and I won't back down." Rowan squeezed her hand. "Then we fight." The hearing was held in the town's small courthouse, packed with spectators who smelled blood in the water. Clara saw Brennan sitting in the back, his expression carefully neutral. Sarah Brennan sat beside him, shooting poisonous looks at Clara. The judge was an older man named Harrison, brought in from the territorial capital to handle the dispute. He had a reputation for being fair, but strict about procedure. The mining company's lawyer went first, presenting what he claimed were original survey documents from 1867. They showed the property boundary running 20 acres east of where the current deed indicated. These documents were stored in the territorial archives, the lawyer explained, recently uncovered during a routine review. They clearly show that the Morrison property, and subsequently the Hale property, encroaches on what should be public land. Clara studied the papers as they were presented. They looked old, yellowed paper, faded ink, but something about them bothered her. She couldn't quite identify what. When it was their turn, Rowan's lawyer, a young man named Davies that Catherine had recommended, presented their deed and the survey from when Morrison originally bought the property 40 years ago. The Hales purchased in good faith based on legally recorded documents, Davies argued. Their deed is clear, properly filed, and has been recognized for 4 decades without dispute. The territorial archives take precedence over later county records, the mining company's lawyer countered. These are original government documents. Judge Harrison studied both sets of papers. I'll need time to examine these thoroughly. Court will recess until tomorrow morning. Clara left the courthouse feeling sick. They'd presented their case, but the mining company's documents looked legitimate. If the judge ruled against them... Mrs. Hale? A quiet voice stopped her on the courthouse steps. She turned to find an elderly man with kind eyes. He looked vaguely familiar. I'm Arthur Chen. My wife runs the boarding house. Clara remembered. Mrs. Chen, who'd supported her after the timber contract dispute. Mr. Chen, can I help you? Maybe I can help you. He glanced around nervously. Those survey documents they showed today. I was a clerk in the Territorial Land Office in 1867. I processed surveys. Clara's heart started pounding. And I never saw those papers. The handwriting on them, it's wrong. The territorial surveyor in 67 was a man named Marcus Webb. I saw his writing every day for 3 years. That's not his hand. You're sure? Certain. Webb had distinctive penmanship, very precise, almost mechanical. Those documents are too flowery, too casual. Chen handed her a piece of paper. This is a sample of Webb's actual work. I kept copies of some surveys as examples. Compare them. Clara looked at the sample. Chen was right. The handwriting was completely different. Would you testify to this? She asked. I'm an old man. My memory isn't what it was. But yes, if it helps, I'll testify. He smiled. My wife thinks very highly of you, Mrs. Hale. Says you're the kind of woman this territory needs more of. I tend to agree. Clara wanted to hug him. Instead, she shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You might have just saved us. She found Davies immediately and showed him Chen's sample. The lawyer's eyes widened. This is good. This is very good. But we need more. Handwriting comparison might not be enough on its own. Clara thought fast. The paper. Old documents yellow with age, but the rate depends on storage conditions. If these papers were really in the territorial archives, they should show consistent aging patterns with other documents from the same period and location. Can we prove that by tomorrow? I don't know, but I'm going to try. Clara spent that night at the Territorial Archives, a dusty building that smelled like old paper and neglect. The archivist, initially reluctant to help, became interested when Clara explained what she was looking for. Document authentication based on paper aging? That's unusual. But possible? Maybe. Let me show you our 1867 collection. They pulled every survey document from 1867. Clara examined them under lamplight, comparing paper color, texture, ink fade patterns. The archivist brought her documents from 1866 and 1868 for comparison. By 3 in the morning, Clara had her answer. The mining company's documents didn't match. The paper was too uniform in color. Real aged documents showed variations, darker spots where they'd been exposed to more light or moisture. The ink fade pattern was wrong too even. Real ink faded inconsistently, darker in some letters than others depending on how the quill had been pressed. These documents had been artificially aged, probably soaked in tea or coffee to yellow them, written with deliberate care to look old. They were forgeries. Clara documented everything with the archivist as witness. She made detailed notes, took comparison samples. By the time the sun rose, she had a case. The courthouse was even more packed the second day. Word had spread that Clara had something. Brennan looked less confident, his jaw tight. When Judge Harrison called the court to order, Davies stood. "Your Honor, we have new evidence regarding the authenticity of the mining company's documents." The mining lawyer objected immediately. "This is highly irregular. This is a hearing, not a trial," Harrison interrupted. "I'll allow it. Proceed, Mr. Davies." Davies called Arthur Chen first. The old man explained his years in the Territorial Land Office, his familiarity with Marcus Webb's handwriting. He compared the mining company's documents to his authentic samples. "This is not Webb's work," Chen said firmly. "I'd stake my reputation on it." The mining lawyer tried to dismiss him as senile, memory unreliable, but Chen's testimony was too specific, too detailed. Then Davies called Clara. She walked to the witness stand with her documentation, her notes, her comparison samples, and she methodically, precisely destroyed the mining company's case. She explained paper aging patterns, showed how the documents didn't match other papers from the same period and storage location, demonstrated how the ink fade was too uniform to be natural, pointed out anachronisms in the document formatting that wouldn't have been used in 1867. "These documents are forgeries," Clara concluded, "created recently and artificially aged to appear authentic. They're good forgeries. Whoever made them knew what they were doing. But they're not real." The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel for order. The mining company's lawyer was sweating now. "This is speculation, Your Honor. Mrs. Hale is not a certified document examiner." "No, but I am," said a new voice from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. A man in a suit walked down the aisle carrying a leather case. "Dr. Edmund Price, Territorial Document Examiner. I was sent by the Archives Office after Mrs. Hale's inquiry last night." He smiled at Clara. "The archivist was concerned enough to telegraph me. I took the first train." Judge Harrison looked interested. "You've examined these documents, Dr. Price?" "I have, Your Honor. Mrs. Hale's analysis is not only correct, it's impressively thorough for someone without formal training." Price opened his case and pulled out magnified photographs. "These documents are definitely forgeries. I can provide detailed technical analysis if needed, but the conclusion is unambiguous." The mining lawyer was pale now. "Your Honor, we were provided these documents in good faith. If they're false, we had no knowledge." "Who provided them?" Harrison asked sharply. The lawyer hesitated. "I'm not at liberty. Answer the question, or I'll hold you in contempt." "A private investor. He wished to remain anonymous." "I bet he did," Clara said loudly. Harrison looked at her. "Mrs. Hale, do you know who this investor is?" Clara looked straight at Brennan. "I have a very good idea, Your Honor, but I can't prove it. Not yet." Brennan's face was red, but he said nothing. Harrison studied the evidence for a long moment. Then he made his ruling. "The mining company's claim is dismissed. Their evidence is fraudulent and will be turned over to law enforcement for investigation into document forgery. The Hale property boundaries stand as recorded in their legal deed." He banged his gavel. "This hearing is concluded." The courtroom exploded with noise. Clara felt Rowan's arms around her, heard Davies congratulating them, saw Catherine Morrison smiling from across the room. But mostly, she saw Brennan storming out, his face twisted with rage. She'd won. They'd won. But the look on Brennan's face told her this was far from over. The celebration didn't last long. Clara and Rowan were barely back at the ranch when they saw smoke rising from the direction of town. Black, thick smoke that spoke of something bigger than a cooking fire. Rowan grabbed his spyglass and trained it on the horizon. His face went pale. "What is it?" Clara asked. "The Morrison house. It's burning." They rode hard toward the property, arriving to find half the structure already engulfed. Neighbors were forming a bucket brigade from the creek, but it was clear the house was lost. The family cemetery sat 50 yards away, untouched but dangerously close to the spreading flames. "We need to protect the cemetery," Clara shouted over the roar of fire. "If the wind shifts—" She didn't need to finish. Rowan was already organizing people to wet down the ground around the graveyard, creating a fire break. Clara joined the bucket brigade, her arms screaming as they passed water hand to hand. It took 3 hours to get the fire under control. By then, the Morrison house was nothing but smoking timbers and ash. Clara stood looking at the destruction, her face and clothes black with soot, and felt rage building in her chest. This wasn't an accident. Couldn't be. The sheriff arrived as the last flames were being dampened. Ben Tucker was a practical man in his 50s, more concerned with keeping the peace than seeking justice. He surveyed the damage with a grim expression. "Anyone see how it started?" he asked. "I was riding past around noon," said old Sam from the blacksmith shop. "Saw two men on horses heading away from the property. Didn't think much of it at the time." "You recognize them?" "Too far away, but one of them was riding a distinctive horse, gray gelding with white stockings on the front legs." Clara's breath caught. She'd seen that horse, in Brennan's stable. "Sheriff," she said, "this was arson. Someone deliberately set this fire." Tucker looked at her tiredly. "You got proof of that, Mrs. Hale?" "The timing is suspicious. This property just survived a legal challenge that would have taken it from us. Now suddenly it burns? Suspicious isn't proof? Then investigate. Look for accelerants. Question people who might have seen something." "I'll do my job, Mrs. Hale. Don't need you telling me how." But Claire could see in his eyes that he wouldn't push too hard. Not against someone like Brennan. Tucker wanted a quiet town, not a war between influential families. Rowan touched her arm. "Let it go, for now." Clara wanted to scream. Instead, she swallowed her rage and walked away. That night, they sat on their porch and watched the sun set over the valley. The smell of smoke still hung in the air. "He's not going to stop," Clara said quietly. "Brennan, this is what happens when you wound a man's pride. He'd rather destroy everything than admit defeat." "So what do we do?" "I don't know." It was the first time Clara had admitted that, and it tasted bitter. "Every move we make, he counters. Every time we win, he escalates." Rowan was silent for a long moment. "My father used to say that some fights you can't win by fighting. Sometimes you have to change the game entirely." "What does that mean?" "It means maybe we're approaching this wrong. We've been defending, reacting to what Brennan does. Maybe it's time to go on offense." Clara looked at him. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Brennan's power comes from people being afraid of him. What if we take that away?" Over the next week, Clara and Rowan quietly reached out to everyone Brennan had ever wronged or intimidated. The shopkeepers he'd squeezed for protection money. The ranchers he'd undercut with predatory business practices. The families he'd spread rumors about when they wouldn't bend to his will. Catherine Morrison helped, using her connections to gather information. What they discovered was a pattern of abuse stretching back years. Brennan had built his influence on fear and manipulation, carefully targeting people who couldn't fight back. But together, those people were a force. Clara organized them like a military campaign. She created documentation of every incident, every threat, every underhanded deal. She built a case not for the sheriff, who she knew wouldn't act, but for the territorial governor's office. Financial crimes, intimidation, fraud, conspiracy, she said, laying out the evidence for Catherine. Individually, these incidents might be dismissed, but together they show a pattern, a systematic abuse of power. "The governor won't care about a local business dispute," Catherine warned. "He'll care about territorial water rights being manipulated through shell companies. He'll care about forged government documents. And he'll definitely care about arson that could have spread to a family cemetery." Clara's smile was sharp. "We're not asking him to settle a feud. We're asking him to investigate territorial crimes." Catherine studied the documentation. "This is good work, Clara. Thorough. But you need a trigger. Something that forces the governor's hand." "I know, I'm working on that." The trigger came from an unexpected source. Sarah Brennan appeared at the ranch 3 days later, alone and visibly upset. Clara answered the door with suspicion. "What do you want?" "To talk." "Please." Sarah's perfect composure was cracking. "I made a mistake coming here before. Multiple mistakes, but I need your help." Clara didn't move from the doorway. "Why would I help you?" "Because my father is planning something terrible, and I can't stop him alone." Sarah's voice broke. "Please, just hear me out." Against her better judgment, Clara led her inside. Rowan came in from the barn, stopped short when he saw Sarah. "What's she doing here?" he asked. "Apparently asking for help." Clara crossed her arms. "Talk, quickly." Sarah sat at the kitchen table, hands twisting in her lap. My father is obsessed with destroying you. Both of you. It's all he talks about. The timber contract, the Morrison property, the court case. Every loss has made him more unhinged. Tell us something we don't know, Rowan said. He's planning to burn your timber stands, all of them. He's hired men to do it. They're waiting for the right wind conditions so the fire will spread fast, be impossible to stop. Clara felt ice slide down her spine. When? I don't know exactly. Soon. He said something about waiting for dry weather. Sarah looked up, and her eyes were desperate. I know I have no right to ask anything from you. I've been terrible, but I can't let him do this. It's too far, even for him. Why are you telling us? Rowan asked. He's your father. He's a monster. Sarah's voice was flat. And I'm tired of pretending he's not. I've watched him ruin people my whole life. Told myself it was just business, just the way things were done. But it's not. It's cruelty. And I can't be part of it anymore. Clara studied her, looking for deception, found only exhaustion and genuine fear. If you're lying, Clara started. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Sarah pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. He keeps records, notes about his plans. I copied this from his desk. Clara took the paper. It was in Brennan's handwriting, detailing payment schedules to men named only by initials, fire placement locations, escape routes, everything needed to prove premeditated arson. Why should we trust you? Clara asked. This could be a trap. It could be, but it's not. Sarah stood. Do what you want with that information. Tell the sheriff, tell the governor, tell everyone. I don't care anymore. I just want this to stop. She left before Clara could respond. Rowan and Clara stared at the paper in silence. It could still be a trap, Rowan said finally. I know, but what if it's not? Clara looked at him. What if this is our chance to end this for good? They took the document to Catherine Morrison, who had connections with the territorial marshal's office. The marshal, a hard-eyed man named Coleman, read through it carefully. This is good intelligence, he said, but it's not enough to arrest on. We need to catch them in the act. So we wait for them to set our property on fire? Clara demanded. No, we set a trap. Coleman leaned forward. You let it be known you'll be away from the ranch on a specific night. Make it believable. A trip to the capital, business that can't be postponed. Meanwhile, my deputies and I will be watching. When Brennan's men show up to set the fires, we catch them. And if something goes wrong? Rowan asked. If they get past your men? They won't. I'll have 6 deputies positioned around your timber stands. The moment anyone tries to start a fire, we move in. It was risky. Clara knew that. But it was also the best chance they had to end this. They spent 2 days making preparations. Clara made a show of booking train tickets to the capital, told everyone in town she and Rowan would be gone for 3 days on business. She even had their luggage loaded onto the afternoon train. Then, after dark, they circled back to the ranch through the forest trails and hid in their own barn with Marshal Coleman's men. The waiting was agony. Clara sat in the dark loft, rifle across her lap, and watched the tree line. Rowan was beside her, equally tense. Around them, deputies were positioned in shadows. What if they don't come? Clara whispered. They'll come. Brennan can't help himself. Midnight passed. Then 1 in the morning. Clara was starting to think the whole thing had been a trap after all when she saw movement at the edge of the timber stand. 3 men on horses, moving quietly. They dismounted and pulled out containers, kerosene, from the smell that drifted on the wind. Coleman raised his hand, signaling his men to wait. Let them commit to the crime. One of the men splashed kerosene on the first row of trees. Another was doing the same 50 yards away. The third stood watch. The first man struck a match. Now! Coleman shouted. Deputies erupted from hiding. The arsonists tried to run, but they were surrounded. Within minutes, all 3 were in custody, their hands bound, kerosene containers confiscated as evidence. Coleman approached the watchman, who looked terrified. Who hired you? I don't know what you're talking about. You were about to commit arson on private property. That's a territorial offense. You're looking at 10 years minimum. Coleman's voice was iron. But if you cooperate, tell us who paid you. The prosecutor might go easier. The man broke immediately. Jack Brennan, He paid us $500 to burn the Hale timber stands. Said to make it look like an accident, like the fire spread from a lightning strike. Oh, you have proof of this payment? He gave us half up front. $100 bills, they're in my saddlebag. Coleman retrieved the money. Marked bills, easily traced. He smiled grimly. Gentlemen, you just gave me everything I need. By dawn, Marshal Coleman was knocking on Jack Brennan's door with arrest warrants. Clara and Rowan watched from a distance as Brennan was led out in handcuffs, his face purple with rage. He saw them across the street and shouted, "This isn't over. You think you've won? I'll destroy you. Coleman shoved him into the wagon that would take him to the territorial jail. Save it for the judge. Sarah Brennan stood in her doorway, watching her father's arrest with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. Relief, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Their eyes met across the distance. Sarah nodded once, then went inside and closed the door. The trial happened 3 weeks later. The evidence was overwhelming. The hired arsonist's testimony, the marked bills, the documents Sarah had provided showing Brennan's planning, the pattern of harassment Catherine's lawyers had documented. The prosecutor added charges related to the forged survey documents, the earlier acts of sabotage, everything. Jack Brennan was convicted on 7 counts, including conspiracy to commit arson, fraud, and criminal harassment. He was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. Clara sat in the courtroom and watched him be led away. She waited to feel triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. "You all right?" Rowan asked as they left the courthouse. "I keep thinking about how much time we wasted fighting him, how much energy went into just defending ourselves. That's over now." "Is it? There'll be someone else, another Brennan, another man who can't stand seeing people succeed on their own terms." Rowan pulled her close. "Maybe. But next time, we'll be ready. And next time, we'll have allies." He was right. Over the past months, they'd built a network of people who'd stood with them. Catherine Morrison and her business connections, the Chens and their community influence, the ranchers and shopkeepers who'd found their own courage by watching Clara refuse to back down. They weren't alone anymore. A week after the trial, a letter arrived from the city. Clara recognized the handwriting immediately, her father's cramped, impatient scrawl. She opened it with steady hands. The letter was short. Thomas Whitmore was in financial trouble. His investments had collapsed, his business partners had abandoned him, and he was facing bankruptcy. Vivian had left him, taking Margaret and what remained of the household valuables. He was alone, desperate, and asking Clara for help. Not asking, demanding, as if he had any right. Clara read the letter twice, then handed it to Rowan. "What are you going to do?" he asked after reading it. Clara took the letter back and walked to the fireplace. She held it over the flames, watching the paper catch and curl. "Nothing," she said. "I'm going to do absolutely nothing. He's your father. He stopped being my father the day he laughed while signing papers to send me away." Clara watched the letter burn to ash. He made his choice. "I'm making mine." Rowan wrapped his arms around her from behind. "No regrets?" "Not one." Clara turned to face him. "He wanted me gone because I was difficult and opinionated and too honest. Those same qualities built everything we have here. Built this ranch, this partnership, this life. Why would I regret that?" "You wouldn't. I just needed to hear you say it." Clara smiled and kissed him. "I'm exactly where I want to be. With exactly who I want to be with. My father can't take that away. No one can." That spring, they broke ground on an addition to the house. The ranch was profitable now, the timber contracts were solid, and they had plans to expand the cattle operation. Catherine Morrison had become a business partner and friend, investing in their expansion in exchange for a share of the profits. Clara sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun set over the valley, and thought about how much had changed in less than a year. She'd arrived here expecting exile and found home instead. Expected to be tolerated and found herself valued. Expected to survive and discovered she could thrive. The sound of hammers from the construction site mingled with the evening birdsong. Rowan came out and sat beside her, handing her a cup of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About my family. About what they thought would happen when they sent me here." "And what did they think?" "That I'd fail. that the mountain man would send me back within weeks, and I'd come home humiliated and broken, ready to be the daughter they wanted. Instead, Clara smiled. Instead, I became someone I actually like, someone capable and strong and unafraid. They meant it as punishment. Turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Rowan took her hand. For both of us. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Lights appeared in the windows of the new addition, the workers finishing up for the day. Tomorrow they'd continue building. Tomorrow there would be more work, more challenges, more problems to solve. But tonight, Clara was content to sit here with her husband, on the porch of the home they'd built together, and simply be. A rider appeared on the road leading to the ranch. As they got closer, Clara recognized Mr. Chen from town. "Evening, Mr. Chen," Rowan called. "What brings you out this way?" "Message from the Territorial Council." Chen handed Clara an official-looking envelope. "They asked me to deliver it personally." Clara opened it with curiosity. Her eyes widened as she read. "What is it?" Rowan asked. "They're asking me to serve on the Territorial Water Rights Commission. They want someone with experience in land management and resource conservation." Clara looked up, stunned. "They're asking me to help write policy for the whole territory." "Will you do it?" Rowan asked. Clara thought about it. A year ago, she would have said no automatically. Kept her head down, avoided attention, stayed small and safe. But she wasn't that person anymore. "Yes," she said. "I think I will." Mr. Chen smiled. "My wife will be pleased to hear it. She's been telling everyone that Clara Hale is exactly the kind of voice the territory needs." After he left, Clara read through the letter again. It detailed the commission's goals, the meetings she'd need to attend, the research required. It was a significant responsibility. It would mean time away from the ranch, political battles, resistance from men who thought women had no place in policy decisions. It would be difficult. Clara smiled. Good. She was excellent at difficult. "You're sure about this?" Rowan asked. "It's going to mean fighting. More men like Brennan, more people who'll try to tear you down. I'm sure. Besides, I've gotten pretty good at fighting. And winning." "Yeah, you have." Rowan pulled her close. "The territory doesn't know what it's in for." "Neither did you when you married me." "Best surprise of my life." Clara laughed and kissed him, there on the porch of their ranch, with the mountains rising behind them and the valley spreading out below. Somewhere in the city, her father was probably still waiting for a response to his letter, still expecting the daughter he'd tried to break to come crawling back. She hoped he waited forever, because that daughter didn't exist anymore. In her place was Clara Hale, rancher, businesswoman, future territorial commissioner, a woman who'd been sent away as a joke and had built something real from it, who'd been called difficult and turned that into power, who'd been told she was too honest, too opinionated, too much, and decided those things weren't flaws at all. They were exactly who she was meant to be. The stars came out bright and clear in the mountain sky. Clara leaned against Rowan and thought about the future. There would be more challenges, more people trying to push her back into the role they thought she should play, more fights for respect, for recognition, for the simple right to be herself. But she'd fought those battles before and won. She'd do it again. And again. For as long as it took. Because the girl they'd shipped off to the mountains as punishment had found something they never expected her to find. She'd found herself. Her purpose. Her home. And she was never, ever giving it back. In the distance, the new addition to their house stood half-finished, a promise of growth and expansion. Of a future they were building together, one choice at a time. The cruel joke her family had played, marrying her off to a rough mountain rancher they thought would regret taking her, had become the foundation of everything good in her life. Their exile had been her escape. Their punishment had been her liberation. And standing there on the porch with Rowan's arm around her and the whole valley spread out before them, Clara Whitmore Hale knew with absolute certainty that she'd won. Not just against Brennan or her family or any individual enemy. She'd won something bigger. The right to choose her own path. The freedom to be exactly who she was. The love of a man who valued her strength instead of fearing it. The peace of knowing she'd never have to pretend to be less than she was ever again. The first stars reflected in the creek below, and Clara smiled. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges. Tomorrow, she'd start learning everything she needed to know about water rights policy. Tomorrow, she'd continue building the ranch and the life they'd created. But tonight, she simply stood with her husband under the mountain sky and appreciated what they'd built, what they'd survived, what they'd become together.